You're watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanwa, and let's take a look at today's top stories. Donald Trump says there will likely be more U.S. deaths as Iran strikes continue. The U.K. rules out an offensive role after regional attacks but backs defensive measures. And oil prices surge and markets fall as Iran strikes raise fears over shipping. U.S. and Israeli strikes have escalated tensions across the Middle East, hitting Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, and Bahrain. Tehran and Beirut face heavy attacks while U.S. forces report casualties as ongoing operations continue.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday combat operations in Iran are ongoing and will continue until all of Washington's objectives are achieved. In a video posted on the Truth Social platform, Trump confirmed that 3 U.S. service members had been killed and warned there could be further losses, vowing to avenge the deaths of Americans.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there.
Tehran was hit by intense strikes on Sunday night, with explosions, fires and air raid sirens across the city. The assault began around 2100, hitting multiple sites, including state-run IRIB facilities. The Israel Defense Forces targeted the IRGC headquarters, while Israel plans to call up 100,000 reservists along borders and in contested areas. Prime Minister Netanyahu said airstrikes are intensifying. U.S. President Trump said 48 senior Iranian officials had been killed, with 3 U.S. service members dead and 5 wounded. The IRGC launched the 9th wave of Operation True Promise 4. Explosions were also reported in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and other parts of Israel. 2 drones reportedly targeted the U.S. Victoria military base near Baghdad International Airport. 1 drone fell inside the base's special operations area, and the other was intercepted by U.S. air defenses. The logistics support center was reportedly a target. No details on casualties or damage have been released, and investigations are ongoing. Thick smoke was seen over Manama on Sunday after what appeared to be Iranian strikes hit Bahrain's main U.S. naval base. The fire came from the base, which hosts the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet HQ. After attacks by Israel and the U.S., Iran said it had retaliated against Israeli and nearby U.S. targets across the Arabian Gulf. On Monday, Israel carried out airstrikes on Hezbollah-controlled southern Beirut after rocket and drone attacks on Israel. Over a dozen explosions were reported, forcing residents to flee. The strikes targeted senior Hezbollah members in Dahiyeh, with evacuation warnings for villages in southern and eastern Lebanon. Several rockets from Lebanon landed in open areas. 1 was intercepted, and no casualties or damage were reported.
Iran's security chief Ali Larijani stressed that Tehran will not enter into talks with the United States after it has plunged the region into chaos, while top diplomat Abbas Araghchi said Iran doesn't want war with its neighbors hosting U.S. bases and remains open to diplomacy.
Iran's Secretary of Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, has categorically rejected talks with the United States, stressing that Tehran will not negotiate with Washington as the Israel-U.S. invasion of Iran entered its 3rd day on Monday. Larijani, who was a senior aide to Iran's former supreme leader, killed on Saturday in the air raids, also warned that U.S. President Donald Trump's false hopes and new lies have plunged the region into chaos, increasing the risk of further American troops' casualties. His statements on X social platform were made after Trump's remarks on Sunday about Tehran's reaching out for talks, as well as the confirmation by U.S. military sources that 3 of its soldiers were killed and 5 wounded in Iran's attacks. However, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi left the door of diplomacy ajar, stating that Tehran remains open to de-escalation. In phone talks with his regional counterparts, including mediator Oman, he described Iran's attacks on U.S. bases in the regional countries as legitimate acts of self-defense. Also, in a post on his X account, he said air attacks on capital have not changed Iran's war capabilities, adding that Tehran is the party to decide when and how the war will end. Meantime, Revolutionary Guards released a new footage of its underground UAV bases, showing firing them against Israel. Since Saturday, IRGC has announced in a series of statements the waves of missiles and UAV raids against Israel, as well as U.S. assets in the region, saying the retaliatory attacks will continue with more sophisticated weapons. Turaj Shiralidu, reporting from Tehran, Foreign News.
The security situation across Israel has deteriorated sharply overnight, with incoming fire reported in several cities and emergency services responding to casualties. At the same time, fighting has broadened beyond Israel's immediate borders. Armed exchanges with Hezbollah have intensified along the northern frontier, and Israeli forces are carrying out further operations in Lebanon. Maria Rodriguez-Abalde has more details from Tel Aviv.
A difficult night across all of Israel, with constant alerts. In Jerusalem, a missile were not intercepted and struck on an avenue, hitting several cars with 7 people injured. The war in the Middle East continues, and as Netanyahu had announced, the attacks will intensify in the coming hours. Hezbollah joins the war against Israel. The IDF confirmed 6 rockets were launched at Haifa in the latest barrage. At the same time, Israel launched dozens of strikes in Lebanon and allegedly ended the lives of several of their top officials. The Lebanese Ministry of Health confirmed at least 31 deaths in IDF attacks, and Israeli security sources say that the campaign in Lebanon could include a ground operation. Multiple fronts and Epic Fury operation. Iran attacked 10 countries in Middle East so far. Meanwhile, Washington said that 3 USA military personnel have been killed and 5 seriously wounded, and also new allies such as the announcements of France, Germany and the United Kingdom prepare to participate in operations to destroy Iran's capabilities. These countries agreed to coordinate with the European Union. At least USA can use their military bases.
The International Atomic Energy Agency said it has no indication that the recent Israeli and U.S. military attacks on Iran have struck any nuclear facilities. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi told the agency's Board of Governors at an emergency meeting in Vienna. Director General Rafael Grossi reported that radiation levels remain normal in countries bordering Iran, with no abnormal increases detected despite recent events. However, he noted that efforts to re-establish contact with the Iranian nuclear regulatory authorities through the Incident and Emergency Center have so far been unsuccessful. Grossi expressed hope that this essential channel of communication will be restored as soon as possible to ensure effective monitoring and cooperation.
So far, no elevation of radiation levels above the usual background levels has been detected in countries bordering Iran. Regarding the status of the nuclear installations in Iran, up to now, we have no indication that any of the nuclear installations, including the Bushehr nuclear power plant, the Tehran research reactor, or other nuclear fuel cycle facilities, have been damaged or hit.
The UK, France and Germany have announced that they are willing to take defensive actions to destroy any potential threats posed by Iran. But many of the European Union's member states remain divided over the legality of the US and Israel strikes on Iran and how to respond going forward. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
At the conclusion of Sunday's emergency meeting of EU foreign ministers, the European Union's top diplomat and foreign affairs chief, Kaja Kallas, released a statement on behalf of the European Union in which she said that Iranian attacks on the region were inexcusable. She said that she sees the situation with utmost concern, calling for a maximum restraint. She also said that actions are being taken to ensure that EU citizens in the wider region are protected. Now, member states are divided on this issue, especially the legality of the strikes by the US and Israel under international law. We've seen that play out in comments from several EU leaders. We've heard from Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. He says that he rejects the unilateral military action by both the US and Israel. On the other hand, we've heard from the likes of Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor. He says that this is not a time to lecture our allies. He says that despite doubts that he may have, he shares many of the same goals. This really highlights the precarious position the EU is standing on while they have called for diplomacy and for negotiations to resolve these issues, most notably Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. Big questions about the response the US took, how it's conducting its business on the international stage, but at the same time not wanting to isolate themselves from the US. We've already heard from one prominent US Senator, Lindsey Graham, describing the EU's response as pathetic, really suggesting the position that the EU finds itself in. Now, we have had a stance from the E3, the group of the UK, France and Germany, taking more of a proactive stance in the region, saying they are ready to take what they describe as defensive actions to destroy threats at their source. So really saying they could conceivably target such as where drones are coming from in Iran, as well as their missiles. We also know that France has announced that it is deploying one of its aircraft carriers to the region. So while some in Europe are willing to take further action, seemingly aligning a little closer with the US, there is certainly also some trepidation from other EU member states. This all comes as the European Commission is holding a security college on Monday to discuss this issue of how the EU should proceed during these incredibly precarious times for the region. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, warns that the safety in the Middle East and in the wider region is interwoven with Europe, and threats that Cyprus could be targeted with missiles just shows and gives credence to quite how interlinked that really is. William Denslow, Frey News in Brussels.
Britain has moved to deepen its involvement in the Middle East crisis after a suspected drone strike targeted a UK airbase in Cyprus. And Westminster agreed to let the United States use British bases for limited defensive action against Iran. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says British forces remain in a defensive role as tensions with Tehran continue to escalate across the region.
British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed that UK military aircraft are patrolling the Middle East as tensions with Iran continue to escalate. Britain's Royal Air Force base in Cyprus was targeted in what the Ministry of Defence described as a suspected drone strike late on Sunday night. Armed forces responded to the incident at RAF Akrotiri around midnight local time. The Cypriot president later confirmed that the base was targeted by an Iranian-made Shahed drone. The incident comes after Starmer announced that the United Kingdom has agreed to a US request to use British military bases for what he called specific and limited defensive strikes against Iranian missile sites.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved.
Salma stressed that the UK did not take part in the recent US-Israel strikes that killed Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and that British forces will not participate in offensive operations against Iran itself.
I want to be very clear. We all remember the mistakes of Iraq, and we have learned those lessons. We were not involved in the initial strikes on Iran, and we will not join offensive action now.
Earlier, Defense Secretary John Healey reiterated the government's stance that Britain's role is defensive, protecting UK personnel and allies, and declined to comment on the legal basis for the US and Israeli strikes, saying that is for the US to set out. Healey also said that few people would mourn Mr. Khamenei's death, calling Iran's regime as a source of terror and repression, and added that the UK is reviewing its terror threat level at home, considering the heightened regional tensions. With tensions high across the Middle East, the government is also mounting a major operation to support up to 200,000 British nationals in the Gulf. More than 94,000 Britons have registered with the Foreign Office for updates, most of them holidaymakers in the United Arab Emirates or travelers at major hubs. Officials are developing contingency evacuation plans should airspace remain closed in the region. So people are currently advised to stay where they are, follow local authority instructions, and monitor official travel advice. Zaina Farizadeh, Air News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Oil prices have surged and stock markets have fallen after US and Israeli strikes on Iran raised fears over shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Investors are also moving money into gold.
Oil prices jumped sharply at the start of trading after the United States and Israel carried out major strikes on Iran, escalating the conflict in the Gulf. Brent crude briefly surged by more than 10% in early trading before easing back, but it remains significantly higher. At the same time, stock markets across Asia fell as traders reacted to concerns over possible supply disruptions. Gold prices climbed as investors sought safer assets. The immediate concern is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and large volumes of liquefied natural gas pass each day. Following the strikes, said vessels had come under attack near the area. Some shipping companies have halted transit and tanker traffic has slowed, with vessels waiting on either side of the strait. Iran has not formally announced a closure, but media reports say Tehran warned tankers that no ships would be allowed to pass. OPEC Plus has agreed a modest increase in output, yet experts say that will not matter if shipments cannot move. Economists say the key factor now is duration. If tensions ease quickly, markets may stabilize. If fighting continues, energy prices could remain elevated, adding further strain to the global economy.
India and Canada will aim to conclude a free trade pact by the end of this year. Prime Minister Mark Carney said during his first visit to New Delhi. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also mentioned that two countries would soon finalize a comprehensive economic partnership. During joint media appearance, Modi said that New Delhi and Ottawa hope to increase bilateral trade from nearly $9 billion to $50 billion by 2030. The two sides also agreed on a $2.6 billion uranium deal and will work on building small modular nuclear reactors and advanced reactors. India and Canada would also work to strengthen defense industries and enhance maritime domain awareness, Modi said. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the rapid escalation of the Middle East conflict after U.S. jets were mistakenly downed by Kuwaiti air defenses amid intensifying strikes on Iran. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Tensions in the Middle East are spiraling fast. The U.S. Central Command says 3 American fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses during active combat operations, as the U.S. and Israel intensify strikes deep inside Iran. This comes as oil prices surge, airspace across the Gulf tightens, and fears grow of a wider regional war centered on Iran and its allies. To break down the military, political and global implications, I'm joined now by Eugene Chałszowski, Senior Director at the New Lines Institute, joining us from Washington, D.C. Mr. Chałszowski, thank you for joining us at such a critical moment.
Thanks for having me.
So how serious is it that a U.S. ally like Kuwait accidentally shot down American fighter jets?
Well, I think this just shows that we're in the early days of the conflict. So you have this fog of war situation. I don't think it represents any major strategic challenge, other than these are the tactical elements that are, in an operation of this magnitude, with obviously U.S., Israeli, and now several Gulf countries involved. You're going to see things like this happen, but I think strategically the operation will continue as planned.
Mr. Chałszowski, the United States and Israel say they have hit thousands of targets inside Iran. Is this now a full-scale war, and do you expect Iran's retaliation to intensify beyond missiles and drones?
Well, certainly we're in a full-scale war environment at this point. In terms of Iran's retaliation, we've already seen, things that we've seen in the past in terms of targeting sites within Israel. Before we saw limited certain installations in the Gulf countries, including U.S. bases, but now that target set has obviously increased substantially. Not only things like energy facilities across the Gulf region, but even some, civilian targets. So we're definitely seeing an expanded target set both and on the U.S. and Israeli side.
So could disruptions near the Strait of Hormuz trigger a global energy shock?
Well, we're seeing, I think, the beginnings of that currently, obviously with Iran targeting refineries, targeting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. We've seen that already impact energy production, out of countries like Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. So certainly we're going to see a spike in energy prices, as we already have been in both oil and natural gas. Now, the degree to which this will last will depend on Iran's capabilities. I think that what they're showing is that any of these activities, the targets that the U.S. and Israel are targeting and their entire military operations within Iran will not go unpunished, and they're certainly trying to ratchet up that pain, economically speaking, as a way to deter that action. But I think that the ability for Iran to withstand and to continue such attacks are going to be limited. So I think that it's going to be particularly sharp in these early days of the conflict.
Mr. Chałszowski, in your view, are evacuation efforts a sign governments expect this conflict to expand?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Are evacuation signs means that the government think that this conflict will expand? The evacuation signs.
Well, certainly, right. Yeah, I think certainly, these countries in the region, the Gulf states, as I mentioned before, obviously U.S. and European diplomats in the region, they're doing this as a precautionary measure. Obviously, with these targets already going after not only, as I said, military sites, but also some civilian and infrastructural sites. So I think this is, basically in anticipation that such attacks will continue, and there is certainly the possibility for it to expand. And an attack as far away as Cyprus, which is not usually in the target set. So I think it's more as a precautionary measure, but obviously things are being done to degrade Iran's capabilities in order to withstand and continue such attacks.
So Israel has also launched an offensive campaign against Hezbollah. In your view, could a simultaneous conflict with Iran and Hezbollah overstretch Israel militarily and politically?
I think Israel has shown in recent years that it's able to sustain a multi-front war, obviously with the situation in Lebanon and Gaza, and now in Iran as well. I think the fact that the US is much more directly involved, especially compared to the 12-day war last year, where it was primarily led by Israel and the U.S. just came in a very targeted way at the end, I think will allow to sustain those operations alongside the U.S.
Eugene Chałszowski, Senior Director at the New Lines Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us during this rapidly evolving crisis. We appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. As tensions escalate between Iran, the United States and Israel, new restrictions have been introduced at the Kapıköy border crossing between Turkey and Iran. Day 3 passenger crossings have been suspended, halting regular movement across the border. Our Ali Sultanzadeh brings you the latest from the ground.
Here at the Kapıköy border crossing between Turkey and Iran, movement has now been restricted. Turkey's Trade Minister Ömer Bolat says day trip passenger crossings at the Iranian border have been suspended. That means regular crossings are no longer taking place. However, Turkish citizens and third country nationals are still being allowed to enter Turkey from Iran. Iran in turn continues to accept its own citizens back across the border. Cargo transit remains ongoing under controlled conditions. Authorities say all units are operating on high alert as tensions across the region continue to escalate. This comes after recent strikes between US, Israel and Iran, which have pushed the situation into a new phase. Well, A News brings you the latest news from the region. Ali Sultanzadeh, Javed Aliyev, A News.
Meanwhile, foreign nationals are being evacuated from Iran into Azerbaijan, where the Astara border, as regional tensions escalate. Nearly 200 people have crossed since Saturday, with more departures expected in the coming days. The evacuations follow US and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliatory missile attacks across the region. Our correspondent Gulçin Kocalieva reports from Astana.
Foreign nationals from 19 countries are being evacuated from Iran through the Astara border into Azerbaijan amid rising regional tensions. Since Saturday, around 192 people have crossed into Azerbaijan, including 50 Chinese nationals and citizens from France, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, the UAE, Jordan, Qatar, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Nepal. Over the past day, another 123 foreign nationals representing 17 countries have entered through this checkpoint. Russia's embassy in Baku confirmed that 39 of its citizens have already been evacuated, while roughly 500 remain on the list for departure. The UK government has issued guidance for British nationals seeking to cross into Azerbaijan via the land border with Iran. Crossings may be possible with special authorization coordinated through the embassy. These evacuations follow the strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran, with Tehran responding with missile attacks on Israeli territory and US military bases in Gulf countries. Several regional states have temporarily closed their airspace as the situation remains fluid. Evacuation operations at the Astara border are ongoing, and updates will be provided as the situation develops. Gulçin Kocalieva, Nijat Kasımov, A News.
Georgia's foreign ministry has responded to the escalating situation in the Middle East, expressing concern over rising tensions and calling for diplomatic de-escalation. At the same time, political analysts are assessing what a prolonged confrontation could mean for regional security and for Georgia itself. Our correspondent reports from Tbilisi.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia has expressed deep concern over ongoing developments in the Middle East. In a statement published on social media, the ministry underlined the importance of diplomatic engagement to ensure de-escalation and maintain regional stability. Authorities are calling on Georgian citizens in the region to follow official guidance and take necessary safety precautions. The ministry also confirmed that Georgia's embassies remain fully operational and ready to provide assistance if required. The escalation centers on growing military confrontation between Iran and Israel, a development that analysts say carries implications beyond the immediate conflict zone. According to political assessments, if air operations continue over an extended period, the region could face increased displacement and broader security pressures. For Georgia, this may translate into humanitarian and security challenges, including the possibility of refugee flows. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Global air travel is under severe strain as escalating strikes involving the US, Israel and Iran trigger widespread Middle East airspace closures. Key hubs remain shut or restricted, grounding thousands of flights and disrupting international connectivity, with no clear timeline for recovery.
Global air travel is facing one of its most serious disruptions in years after US and Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliation across the Gulf triggered widespread airspace closures. For a third straight day, major aviation hubs in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha remain shut or operating under heavy restrictions. Dubai International Airport, normally the world's busiest airport for international travel and a critical east-west crossroads handling around 500 flights a day, has suspended operations after sustaining damage during retaliatory attacks. Aircraft and crews are now stranded across multiple continents, throwing tightly coordinated global schedules into disarray. From Frankfurt to Bali, thousands of flights have been cancelled or diverted, leaving passengers stranded at airports worldwide. Some long-haul services to Australia have turned back mid-journey, while travellers scramble to find alternative routes. Authorities in several countries warn that disruption could continue as airlines are forced to navigate longer, more complex and more expensive flight corridors. The impact goes far beyond passenger travel. Gulf transit hubs serve as critical arteries for global trade and air cargo. Prolonged closures are adding pressure to already strained supply chains, while rising oil prices are driving up operational costs for airlines. Even if regional airspace reopens soon, aviation analysts say it could take days or longer for global schedules to stabilise as displaced aircraft and crews gradually return to position. Amid the disruption, the South Caucasus region, including Azerbaijan, has emerged as an increasingly important alternative transit corridor. Flight tracking data shows a sharp rise in long-haul east-west traffic rerouted through its airspace, underscoring its strategic position between Europe and Asia during regional instability. For now, uncertainty remains the overriding concern. With no clear timeline for the full reopening of regional skies, the aviation sector is once again confronting how quickly geopolitical tensions can disrupt global connectivity.
Kazakhstan has reacted to the rapidly unfolding crisis in the Middle East, issuing diplomatic messages to key regional partners, while at the same time dealing with the impact of the conflict on its own citizens and abroad. Our correspondent reports from Almaty.
President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has sent personal messages to the leaders of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait, expressing support and solidarity with the peoples of these countries amid growing challenges. He condemned military actions undermining the sovereignty and security of states Kazakhstan considers friendly and confirmed readiness to provide assistance while maintaining working contacts at the highest level. At the same time, authorities are focused on the safety of Kazakh citizens in the region. According to official data, 96 Kazakhstanis are currently in Iran, with diplomats preparing their evacuation via land routes. Another sensitive situation is unfolding in Dubai, where thousands of Kazakh tourists remain stranded after drone attacks on the city and its airports. Preliminary estimates suggest around 15,000 Kazakhstanis are currently in Dubai. The confrontation involving Iran, the United States and Israel is now moving beyond the Persian Gulf. For Central Asia and Kazakhstan, this is not distant geopolitics. Experts warn that prolonged instability could affect energy markets, trade routes, migration and regional security, increasing pressure on foreign policy decisions. Iran is strategically important for Kazakhstan as both a market and a key link in the North-South transport corridor designed to provide the shortest route to the Persian Gulf and Indian markets. And analysts note that while an open conflict would make transit through Iran high risk, a potential change of regime in Tehran could lead to the lifting of sanctions and open for Kazakhstan the most direct access to the world's oceans. Fariza Kalimurtina, Almaty, A News.
Uzbekistan has expressed a deep concern over the escalating conflict in the Middle East, calling for restraint and diplomatic dialogue as flight cancellations and travel disruptions begin affecting Uzbek citizens. Our correspondent reports from Tashkent.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Uzbekistan has issued an official statement expressing serious concern over the sharp escalation of tensions in the Middle East, warning that further aggravation could lead to unpredictable military, political and humanitarian consequences. Tashkent called on all sides to exercise maximum restraint and emphasized that the crisis must be resolved in accordance with international law through political and diplomatic means. Uzbekistan reaffirmed its commitment to regional stability and expressed hope for a swift normalization of the situation. Amid the escalating conflict, Uzbekistan's foreign minister held telephone consultations with counterparts from Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Jordan, Bahrain, Azerbaijan and the United Arab Emirates. The sides exchanged views on the rapidly evolving situation and reaffirmed their commitment to respecting sovereignty and resolving disputes through dialogue. The crisis has already affected civilian aviation. Uzbekistan Airways cancelled flights between Tashkent and Dubai, as well as Tashkent and Tel Aviv due to airspace closures in the region. Flights to Jeddah are currently operating via alternative routes for safety reasons. In addition, departures for Umrah pilgrimage have been suspended until further notice. Beginning March 2nd, repatriation flights are being organized from Jeddah to bring Uzbekistan pilgrims home. The foreign minister has advised citizens to postpone non-essential travel to Middle East and to remain in close contact with diplomatic missions. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss how the Iran-US-Israel conflict impacts on regional connectivity and what it means for the South Caucasus. See you shortly. Welcome back to A-News. The escalating conflict between Iran, the United States and Israel sparked by recent US-Israeli strikes on Iran and subsequent Iranian counterattacks has triggered not only military escalation, but widespread disruptions to regional connectivity and mobility across Eurasia. Across the Middle East, major airspace closures have grounded flights and stranded passengers, forcing airlines to reroute or cancel thousands of flights, a blow to global aviation and logistics. While the South Caucasus is physically distant from the immediate battlefield, its critical position as a transit hub linking East and West means that disruptions in air travel, insurance costs and regional trade corridors could have knock-on impacts here as well. There are also early signs of migration pressures, including Iranian refugees and diaspora movements that may impact neighboring states, such as Azerbaijan, Georgia and Armenia. With us to unpack these developments is our distinguished guest, Dmitry Bridze, an expert at the Russian International Affairs Council and a political analyst joining us from Moscow. Mr. Bridze, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Mr. Bridze, can you sketch the current state of the Iran-US-Israel conflict and why it has global spillover risks?
In my opinion, of course, the war between Iran and United States of America is playing a big impact on the international economy and, of course, in the Gulf countries themselves. Because, as we know, the Iranian drones are attacking United Arab Emirates, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and other Gulf countries, and they're trying to target U.S. bases, U.S. interests in the region. And, of course, when we're talking about this situation, it means that the target is also related to the trading corridors in the region and, of course, the interests of different countries. Even we saw the position of the United Kingdom that is condemning the airstrike, the attacks of drones in the Gulf region, and that is attacking also the interest and the interests of the United Kingdom in the Gulf countries. Therefore, as we understand that the US President Donald Trump is trying to change the Middle East, as we know that this is a war that will change the future of the Middle East, as we understand, because the main goal of the United States of America and Israel is to change the political regime in Iran and also to make Iran weaker in the region, as after the terrorist attacks of October, the situation for Iran changed totally in the Middle East, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, and of course, after the collapse of Assad regime in December 2024, the situation also changed for Iran in Syria. Only we know that now Iran have a good position in Lebanon, where there is Hezbollah that is supporting Iran, and that now is in war with Israel. As we know now, the Israeli army is attacking Lebanon, and especially the positions of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and also in Iraq, where we have what's called Al-Hashd al-Shabi, or the Iraqi pro-Iranian militia groups that also they support Iran in this war against the United States interests or bases in the Middle East.
So let's talk about flight cancellations. Can disruptions in Middle East airspace affect airports and air travel patterns in the South Caucasus, such as Tbilisi, Yerevan, and Baku?
I don't think that the target of Iran is related to the South Caucasus or Caucasus, because it's not in the interest or the strategy of Iran to attack this region, as we know that the main target is the Gulf countries, and the interests of the United States in the Gulf countries, in the United Arab Emirates, as we saw about 700 attacks were implemented by Iran, by Iranian drones and rockets. So the situation, of course, is not stable, is not good for the international economy, and because because of the negotiations is failed, and as we understand that Oman tried to stabilize the situation, and there were some positive signals from Amman in these negotiations, but unfortunately, as we understood, the negotiations failed, and now the situation, of course, could affect international flights in the region, because now also the United States of America will launch operation against different targets inside Iran, in Tehran, in Isfahan, and other cities of Iran, in order to make Iran pay the price of its attack on Gulf countries. And we got the report from GCC countries that they are condemning the Iranian attacks, and that these attacks are dangerous for the regional stability and for the regional economy.
Mr. Bridge, what impact is the conflict likely to have on key transport corridors linking East and West, including the Middle Corridor and rail connections?
I think, of course, it will have an impact if there will be a regional war. As we know now, the Iranian regime is trying to make it on the Gulf countries in order to make them part of this war against the United States of America and Israel. And as we understood, the Iranians are trying to attack any countries that are related to the United States of America, any military actions that they have, like a base there, or soldiers, or influence of the United States of America. And we saw this in the United Arab Emirates, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and several Gulf countries. But as we understood that the main goal is to destabilize the region. They are not attacking, like, let's say, Azerbaijan or Turkey or other countries near to Iran, because the strategy is to destabilize the Islamic countries, especially Arab countries that are related to United States of America interests in the region, and to make these countries to pay a price of their relationship with the United States of America.
So, moreover, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Averchuk is visiting Baku, and he has already met with President Ilham Aliyev. What do you expect from this meeting?
In my opinion, these meetings are important for the regional stability. As we know, Russian Federation is trying to stabilize its relationship with Azerbaijan and with Armenia also. As we know, we saw how the situation was unstable for some period of time because of misunderstanding that happened in the past. So now Russian government is trying to stabilize its relationship with the Azerbaijani side. And of course, now the situation in the region is dangerous because of the war between the United States of America and Iran. And of course, it's making Russia to create a new strategy for the region because the corridors are now also, let's say, part of any conflict that could happen between the United States of America and Iran. So Russia is trying to make kind of strategies for solve any problems and any misunderstanding.
Dmitry Bridge, thank you very much for talking to A News. We appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot. Thank you. That's all we have for the hour. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned to A News for more updates.